Hey Finxters, my name is Peter and today we'll be discussing how to remove empty strings from a list of strings in Python. As you can see here, I have a list of strings called words, the quick brown fox, and in between we've got some empty strings. So the question is, how do we remove these strings in Python? One approach that you may be thinking of is to use a for loop. Iterate through each of these elements, check if it's empty. If it is, then remove it. But as we'll see, this is actually not the preferred method to use. We do run into some issues using the for loop, and especially if you modify a list in a for loop, that's really bad practice. So I'll just illustrate that for you here quickly. So we'll call this, this is our for loop. Okay, so we'll specify going through each index throughout the whole length of our words list. For each one, we will check if it's empty. If this is an empty string, then we'll remove it from our list. Since we're using the index, we can use the pop function. Python's a built-in pop function, so I'll specify that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run this. Okay, there we go. So right away we see that we get an index error, list index out of range. So if you don't know what's going on, I'll quickly show you through this Google Sheet. Hopefully this will make sense. So at the top you can see that we've got our words list in here, and then we'll just step through each iteration so that you can see exactly what's happening. So first our index is 0, and we'll compare the element at 0, which is is it empty? No, it's not, so our list will remain unchanged here. Next we'll go to 1. Is it empty? It is, so we'll go ahead and remove that. And we're left with this for our list, right? Okay, so next we'll go to 2, iterator 2, the second index. Is it empty? It is, so we'll call the pop function and remove that one. Okay, so now move on to the next one. 3, index 3, it is empty, so we'll call the pop function again. We're at the 4th iteration, so 4, is it empty? It is, so we'll remove that. And you can already see that our list is already out of index. So by the time we need to check for the 5th index, it's non-existent and therefore out of range. So that's why we get this error. There is kind of something also to look out for besides if the pop function wasn't the first method that you thought of to use, and you were thinking of using the remove function. This specific example actually will work okay with the remove function. So I'll just show that. So we'll do that. So for I in words. So we'll go through each element in the list again. If I is empty, then we'll remove it. Okay, we'll go ahead and run that. So this is our words list. Okay, so as you can see, this is our words list. I reinitialized it with these values just so that you can see. It still has these empty strings in there. Okay, so now we'll call this for loop using the remove function, and it doesn't complain. And when we print words, it actually works. So we actually got lucky in this case, but the danger is, which I found is not always the case. So for example, if we had some more, let's say we put some more empty strings in here. Okay, so I added a couple more empty strings in here. Let's see what happens with that. We call this for loop, and it didn't complain again. But this time when we print words, it actually didn't remove all of the empty strings, right? So it went through the whole loop. We specified to go through each of the elements, but we're still left with 2 empty strings, and again, no out of range error. So if this was your actual code, then you may find that it'll keep running unexpectedly and not produce the results that you're intending. So why is this? What's going on here? Let's see if we can illustrate that as well. Let me copy this over. Okay, so here's our words list, and you can see we've got our empty strings there that we need to remove. We'll step through and see exactly what's going on. And I've highlighted orange to indicate where our current iterator is. So currently we're checking this element, is it empty? No, it's not. So we will not change our list, but we will advance to the next iterator, which is this one. Okay. Is this empty? Yes, this is an empty string. So let's call the remove function on it. So we remove this, and this is our current iterator. Okay, so we remove it, and then we need to advance to the next iterator. Okay, so actually I'm checking quick now. Is this empty? No, it's not. So this is unchanged, but we need to advance to the next iterator, which is this one. Oops. Okay, is this empty? It is, so we need to call the remove function. The remove function will remove the first occurrence, which is this one. Okay, and then we need to advance our iterator. Okay, so since we removed this element here, the iterator was currently in this index. So now we need to advance to the next one. So now we're currently at brown. Okay, so is this empty? It's not. So this is unchanged. Advance to the next iterator, which is this one. Is this empty? Yes, it is. Call the remove function, and that will remove the first occurrence, which is this one. here. Okay, and then we need to advance to the iterator, which is this one. Okay. Okay, is this empty? It is. So we call the remove function, and then that will remove the first occurrence, which in our current list is this one. And then at this stage, we're already at the end of our list. So this tells, in our code, we've already reached the end of the last element, so it doesn't call the remove function anymore. Where are we? So we've gone through each element. According to our illustration, we can see we've already stepped through everything, and we've already got to the last element. So therefore, we are left with 2 empty strings in our list, which is not what we intended originally. So yeah, I hope that kind of those 2 examples show that why for loops are not the preferred way to remove empty strings from a list of strings. So real quick, I'd like to also show you a while loop solution, but it's also not recommended. For this short list, it's not a big deal, but it does have a quadratic runtime complexity, which is out of scope of this discussion. If you do want to look into it, there's a blog post by Christian. It's called The Complexity of Python Operations, and he does discuss big O notation. He talks about algorithms and the different runtime complexities. So I do encourage you to have a read over this. But with that said, yeah, I'll show you what this solution is. We'll use the same example. Okay, so we've got our empty strings in here, and then using the while loop, we could just say, well, there's empty strings in our words list. Remove the empty strings. Okay, so it worked. It didn't complain. It's just 2 lines of code, and we got the results that we wanted. However, just keep in mind, this isn't recommended, and it, especially if you have a list with thousands or tens of thousands, it would be very inefficient to use this code. Okay, so let's look at Python's approach to solving this problem. What is the quote-unquote the Pythonic way? We've got a couple choices. The first one we'll talk about is the filter function. And that takes a function and an iterable. So the iterable part is pretty straightforward. That would just be our words list. So we'll go ahead and redefine it, reinitialize it here. Okay, so we've got our empty strings. So now let's create our filter. Words goes in there. So how do we define our function? Well, we want to filter out the empty strings, and we want to keep the actual strings, right? So one way to define that is okay. Again, we need to pass in our iterable, which is our words list. So we'll iterate through. I guess the X will represent that. As long as it's not empty, then we'll keep it. And then essentially all the empty strings will be filtered out. So let's print this to see what happens. Actually, when you print this, you'll see that it is a filter object. and we won't be able to see what it is until we pass this into our list. Okay, so our filtered object, we will pass it into this list so that way we can see the results. And there we have it. We're left with the quick brown fox. So the empty strings were filtered out. Another lambda definition that you can go for is as long as the element has a length, right? So an empty string does not have length. Okay, so actually I need to reinitialize our words, so copy that. Okay. Okay, so let's reinitialize our words list. Okay, so we've got the empty strings. We'll try this an alternative lambda definition. So we'll specify as long as the element has a length, then we'll keep it, and then if it doesn't have a length, it'll get filtered out, right? So we'll print the result. Parentheses, sorry. Okay, so there we have it. Another alternative definition to our lambda. And then a third one that we could do is, let's reinitialize. Okay, and I just want to go over one last possibility in specifying our filter function. We'll just jump over here in the Python docs just to show this last line here. If function is none, if we don't specify function but we just type in the keyword none, the identity function is assumed. That is, all elements of iterable that are false are removed, which is really convenient for our purposes, because an empty string in Python is considered to be false. Let's see, so none and word. So I'll repeat that. Okay, so if function is none, which is what we did, right? Sorry. So we just used the keyword none where the function should go. And then we specified our iterable, which is the words, our words variable, which has some words and then some empty strings, right? Okay. If function is none, the identity function is assumed. That is, all elements of iterable that are false are removed. So it's essentially removing anything that's false, which are empty strings. So then when we run this, we can see that it does work. Okay, and then the last Python approach that I'd like to discuss is called list comprehension. Okay, so now we'll look at how we use list comprehension to remove empty strings from our list of strings. So, okay, so here's our words list with some empty strings. Okay, as you can see, we still have these empty strings in there. And then we will go ahead and define, let's make a new list, and we'll use list comprehension to remove the empty strings, right? Okay, so list comprehension is they're enclosed in brackets, right? And then inside we just have to specify what is it that we want. So let's just say I for I in words, right? Okay, so I don't know if this makes sense to you, but I guess one way that I kind of read it is that we're iterating through our words list again, which is represented by I for will step through each of these elements. So I for I in words, if I is not equal to empty, right? Okay, so let's go over that again. We're going through our words list one at a time, and then it will get assigned into a new words list as long as it's not empty. So this is our condition here. If I is not equal to an empty string. So let's go ahead and run that. And as you can see, all the non-empty strings were assigned into our new words list. And I'll also show that we can kind of follow the same definition up here with the length, right? So let's reinitialize this. Okay, so we still have these empty ones. Let's define our list comprehension. I for I in words, right? So we can also say if, as long as it has a length, as long as it's non-empty, then those are the strings that we want. So let's print those results. Okay, so as you can see, we only kept the non-empty strings.